service. And that's a distinction. So we think it's very ironic. We think it's ironic that they're saying that their proposal is exactly the same to ours, ladies and gentlemen. We'll take that as a very good sign in the debate. Now, Team England today wants to protect people. Team Canada realizes that the best way to do this is fixing the economy that they live in, not keeping it alive through bailouts. And that's what I'm going to prove to you by analyzing this debate in terms of the three main actors in the debate. Firstly, governments, secondly, companies, and thirdly, individuals. And by going through each one of those in turn, I'm going to show you why Team Canada will carry this debate. So, firstly, let's talk about governments. And Team Canada said that the role of the government in the economy fundamentally changes in different situations. You have normal business cycles, and you have abnormal business cycles. And Team England has chosen to engage us on both, which we're very pleased with. So they talked about normal business cycles and said that we'll still bail out these companies because there's a chance they might become profitable. Essentially what they're doing, ladies and gentlemen, for a side that wants to protect taxpayers, is gamble with taxpayers' money to see if these companies will become profitable. That's not something we believe that government should be doing. Secondly, we talked about abnormal business cycles, and we've already proven to you that many better mechanisms exist. And their only comeback to this is, well, that's the mechanism we're proposing. But what we've proven to you already is, no, it's not. They're completely different mechanisms. Team England hasn't understood what it's arguing for, ladies and gentlemen, because what Team Canada has done is argue for nationalization. And just because Team England doesn't see that coming, doesn't mean that suddenly it's their point. So basically what we'd say is, Nationalization allows the services that these companies provide to be maintained, because it's that overall social good that Team Canada wants to protect. What Team England wants to do is preserve the private structure of that company, and that's worrisome for two reasons. Firstly, we would say that when you're restructuring the company through their bailouts, what happens is that the shareholders in question, the shareholders who voted CEOs, the shareholders who are liable to that moral hazard, stay the same. Essentially, you're just giving them a chance to rebuild once again. That's not something we support. Now, essentially what they're saying is there's still a safety net that exists. But what we would say is that safety net extends, ladies and gentlemen, not in nationalization because the company is completely removed and becomes a property of the government, but only in bailouts where the private structure is maintained and shareholders get a chance to build up once again. So we believe with the analysis on the role of the government, Team Canada has carried this point. So let's look at this idea of companies. Now, essentially we talked to you about creative destruction, that's analysis of companies. And we talked to you about companies that fail by themselves and companies that fail because of factors outside their control. And we've shown you that in both cases they should be allowed to fail. And what Team England has said is that, well, these companies can't have foreseen some of these things, therefore it becomes the prerogative of the government to bail them out because they were short-sighted. Sort of like Team England today when they didn't understand the fundamentals of this debate. But in any case, what we would say is, they haven't past the analysis that no company has an inherent right to success. No company gains a right to its success just because the service it provides is needed by a lot of people. We reject this premise, ladies and gentlemen, that somehow companies that are providing important services, when these services can be provided to the government, now have the right to gain taxpayer dollars to bail themselves out. We reject this premise from Team England today. And they still haven't classed with this idea of natural competition that comes about by preserving the free market and how that's stifled. And how through bailouts, perfectly good companies who had no mistakes in the first place actually can't compete with companies receiving bailout money. That's not something we support. So, Team England then stood up in their second speech and sort of changed this analysis of companies. They said that we support keeping companies afloat at a loss to preserve jobs. We would say the best ways to preserve these jobs is to make sure that they exist in companies that are sustainable, not to keep artificially propping these companies off just to preserve jobs. They talked about banks and key services. In fact, that was their whole third point, social services. What we would say, ladies and gentlemen, is they've already dealt this idea of key social services and strategic industries, saying that they can come under the jurisdiction of the government when the need so arises. What we don't support is tampering with free market forces to allow these essential services to continue to be provided. We believe that the government should assume direct responsibility to let this happen. Now, let's look at the final actor in this debate, the individuals involved. Now, Team England has really hung its flag very strongly on this idea of unemployment. We want people in these small towns, I'll take it in a second, sir, to keep their jobs. And we object to this on a number of levels, which I'll explain after this POI.
As insurance companies, one by one, go under, do you think that makes it more or less difficult for companies to secure insurance?
Can you repeat the last part of that?
Does that make it more or less difficult for small businesses to get insurance?
Well, Again, you're talking about this idea of just the interconnectedness of companies, and what we've already shown to you, ladies and gentlemen, is that there are many different ways in which this interconnectedness can be fixed. And if indeed the economy is so integral, indeed a company is so integral to the well-being of an entire economy, we would preserve it. So what we'd say, ladies and gentlemen, is getting back to this idea of unemployment. Team England's strongest point in this debate, it would appear, this idea that people shouldn't be allowed to lose their jobs. We object to this on two levels. Firstly, let's examine what Team England has actually said with regards to their proposal to fix companies. They say they want to go in and restructure these companies. What inherently comes with this restructuring, ladies and gentlemen, whether or not you accept this idea of bailouts or nationalization, which Team England will now try to remedy in their next speech, what we would say is, what inherently comes with restructuring is jobs being lost. So what Team England has essentially conceded is that they're willing to accept the loss of jobs. Now we're just haggling over how many jobs should be lost. And we take exception to this as well. So let's examine what Team England is actually proposing today. They say they want a continuous cycle where jobs are lost through unsustainable companies, while what we're proposing is perhaps a slightly larger loss of jobs at once to ensure that the companies in place are actually sustainable. Team England would have people continually lose their jobs in a vicious cycle which bailouts give them no opportunity to escape from, whereas Team Canada, by letting these companies fail, might lose more jobs in the short term, but in the long term preserve the integrity of the economic system, and through that, jobs will come. Now, another point they brought up was the idea of pensions and individuals having money and savings that they want to uphold. But once again, ladies and gentlemen, Team England are demonstrating they really aren't using the sharpest tools in the shed. Many governments already have lots of mechanisms they use to ensure individual savings, like in the United States, where up to $100,000 of savings in banks of individuals is already protected anyway. We don't see why bailing out banks, some indirect mechanism of getting pensions back, is needed. So let's examine what we've seen in this debate. First and foremost, we saw a Team England that chose to take this idea of bailouts and make it nationalizing companies, which is not something they're supposed to be proving today. And we believe in this speech we've proven to you distinctly the difference between bailouts and nationalization, and thus the